I'm a big notepad list guy.
Yeah.
Benny knows that about me, but I got started with like a guided journal almost kind of thing. And it was like, write down the one thing you want to do today to be a success. And then you can write down other things under it. But really, it's just this one thing. If you get that done, the day's good. Yeah. And like, there you go. All you got to do is this session. Yeah. Anything else is bonus.
Exactly.
And like that mindset's totally different than like, I need to do these 16 things today. They all have to get done. And I'm going to be stressed out about all of them at the same time.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I'm your host, Benedikt. If you are new to the show, welcome. So glad to have you. If you want to make exciting sounding records from your jam space and you need some guidance, advice, and some help with that, you're in the right place. And if you are already a listener, welcome back. We always appreciate you. It's been a while since we've done the last one, but we are back and I'm so excited about it. And I'm here as always, or like, it's been a while, but like I'm back as I used to be with my co-host and friend, Malcolm Owen Flood from Canada. Hello, Malcolm. How are you?
I'm great, Ben. How are you, Ben?
I am doing great. Thank you. And I'm so excited that we're back.
Awesome. Yes. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while for sure. And I'm very, very happy about it. So this one is really a kind of a catch-up episode. So we've been taking a break from the podcast. And as for the first time ever. Yeah, I actually always bragged about the fact that we were so consistent with this and never missed a week, but it happened. There are many reasons for it, and we still were pretty consistent. Like, I don't know how we're in our fifth year. I don't even know, but it's been 4 years. I think. Yeah.
But this is episode 219. I'm pretty sure. So
years.
we're up there.
We're in the fifth year. So yeah, and there are many reasons for why we had to take this break. And I've been quiet about most of those reasons for a long time now, and I feel like it's finally time to talk about some of it. I've learned a lot during these last couple of weeks and months specifically, and I want to share this with our community. And yeah, because part of why I want to do this is because, first of all, I feel like you should know, because the connection with our audience and our community is really important to me, and people kept reaching out and asking about what happened to the podcast and whether or not everything's okay. So that's one thing. But the other thing is also that I know that many of you listening are struggling as well, because many people do. And I know for a fact that a couple of our students and a couple of our listeners have their own things that they have to deal with, and art and music are helping us with these things. And so I want to share some of my personal stuff, because I feel like that's just part of being human, and we all go through things like that. And I really want to share it. And so This is it. And what we're going to do is it's going to be a quick recap, and I'm going to share the quick backstory without going into too much detail. I will talk about why I had to pause the podcast, because it was mainly because of me, and then what I did instead also, because it wasn't that I did nothing during that time. I also want to talk about how this affected my coaching and mixing, because it did, and some things have changed for the better. And I also want to talk about how I want to create content and do this podcast in the future in some ways. I want to share some exciting events that I'm incredibly grateful for that happened, and some key takeaways from those as well. And finally, I want to talk about why taking care of yourself is important and how it negatively affects your art if you ignore that. And so this is going to be, and then I just want to know everything about what like your trip was like and everything and all, and everything about that, Malcolm, because you've done some exciting things too in the meantime. And then we're going to wrap it up with a preview and like a few things that are next on this podcast. And I'm grateful for you listening again. So if you're joining us, I'm really excited that you still do, that you're still a listener, and I hope you keep listening to this. I hope if you're new that you subscribe, because we're not going anywhere. We're going to be doing it again, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm very happy that we're back. So yeah, let's get into this. And I swear the next couple of episodes will be more tactical and like about certain topics, audio related, but this one I absolutely wanted to do a catch-up episode and just give you the update on what happened. And I promise also there's some things in there that are audio related and that we all need to hear and that we can learn from. So
absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, can't say enough how excited I am to be back. To give people a bit of a picture, it's been at least 2 months since you and I have got to jump on a call together. And it probably didn't appear as quite that long to our listeners, because we usually try and batch a couple and get ahead, so that when I do go away for work, it's usually me taking off, if I'm honest, that causes problems. That we have some in the hopper to take care of it. And then some, when Benny is able, he'll do a solo episode, because I travel away for work. And I went and did the Amazing Race Canada season 10 for a month, and there was that whole pause that we needed to account for. But then the real kicker was that I had my month-long honeymoon right after that, where I was traveling in Italy. So it's like, hey, I cannot record at all for months.
Which is a really good reason. And honestly, like Malcolm, you were texting me right before you left. You were like, I'm going on a honeymoon, but I might be able to get, a podcast in here and there. And I was like, dude, you're not going to record a podcast on your honeymoon. Like, that's not going to happen. Let's not do that.
That wouldn't have happened. Like, I'm glad that you had the wherewithal to be like, don't even try to do that. But like, I there's no way.
Exactly. And that's exactly the right thing to do. So, but we're back. And also, I honestly think that I was so kind of proud of the fact that we never missed a week and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Like, you can take a break, and sometimes you have to, and it's a good decision. And I will talk about why that is. And it's good that we did it. And now we're back, so that's fine.
I'm sure there's many of our listeners that needed a break from us.
That too, exactly. So, I don't know. How do we start? Like, I want to know a lot of you told me about the trip that you did all across Europe. I don't know. Are there any updates that you haven't told me before we did the show, or like anything that you want to talk about before we go into the...
I mean, like, there's not a lot that's relevant, other than to say that it was like the trip of a lifetime. Like, I'm so grateful and lucky that I got to do a trip that long with my wife in like the most beautiful country I've ever visited. Italy's amazing. The food was so good. I got a tattoo while I was there that I won't pull out because it's under my pants. And driving in Italy was one of the more insane things I've ever done. It was just a great trip. And filming The Amazing Race all over Canada was like also a highlight career experience that I've had. It's such a good season. I got to race right to the finale episode, which essentially means that if you watch that show and you see people running around a city, I'm running with them just behind the camera. Or behind the cameraman, I should say, because I'm a sound guy. But it was such a crazy season, and I had the best time. Incredible experience. Yeah, so much fun. So that's kind of my 30-second recap of where I've been. But
very cool.
Benny, life kept kicking for Benny.
Exactly. So, and that's why I want to talk about this. So you said it's often because you take breaks or go on vacations or work trips, and that's true. But also, I should be able to do a solo episode a week or something, and when everything's like normal, right? But I honestly got to a point where this wasn't possible anymore, and there are a couple of reasons for that. So it all started not actually a couple of weeks or months ago, but way earlier than that. I just didn't really realize. So last year, about 1.5 years from now, early last year, my wife left me, and without going into too much detail, we have 2 kids, and like that was, of course, a major change in my life. And I didn't really give myself the time ever to take a break and pause for a moment and like deal with all of that. I just immediately, I moved out and got a new apartment and had to deal with all of that, of course. But I never really stopped the business and the mixing work and the coaching and the podcast and all of those things. And I always thought it's a good idea to do that because it kept me going. I had my systems and routines and everything. But I think I should have taken some time. And people have told me, and I ignored that advice basically. But it all eventually... it just happened, and it all got too much. And so that was the beginning of it. And I kind of kept going and was able to manage it all during last year. But at the same time, the business grew, and everything just got more and more. I was still able to handle it all. Then we lost a team member here who was editing content for us, the podcast and other content. My wife was helping in the business as well. She did a lot of the admin stuff. So all of a sudden I had to do 3 jobs instead of 1. So that added to that at the end of the year then when that content person left us as well. Still kind of able to manage it all. Then I flew to LA and NAMM show earlier this year. And when I came back from that, work really piled up, and I started to feel a little overwhelmed for the first time, like really overwhelmed, where I had the feeling of like, I don't know how long I can keep going like that. And I was not dropping balls, but I felt that it's not sustainable anymore, and I also didn't feel good anymore. Then I got really tired, and I got sick, and I didn't recover from that, and I felt a little like weird. And then I went to the doctor, and then I got a diagnosis, which is not the end of the world, but also it was not something I really needed in that moment. So I have a benign tumor on the pituitary gland is the word, I think. And it's benign. It's not like nothing terrible is going to happen anytime soon. But I have to treat it. It's messing with like the hormones and like mood and all kinds of different things and metabolism and whatnot. And I have to treat it with medication to make the tumor shrink and also to balance it all out again. That was the reason for why I was feeling so tired and a lot of other things that went wrong. And I was like, okay, well, I can deal with that. That is not too terrible. Give me those pills and I'll be fine again. Then I realized that those pills are not as, like, it's not as easy as I thought it was. So I started taking them and I went on vacation with my kids, and it started out well. I thought I could take them really well, and the first week went well. But then from the second week, and they kind of warned me about this, but the second week, I came home from that vacation, dropped off my kids, and I got home. And then it was a combination of being tired from the flight and driving home all night, dropping my kids off and knowing that I won't see them for a while now again because of that whole situation with the family. Coming back to like normal life after this wonderful week of vacation with my kids, work piling up again after the vacation, a lot of bills that were due at the same time around that time of the year where I pay all my yearly stuff and whatnot, and then pressure from studio projects and all kinds of things. And so I got home, I got to bed, and then I woke up the next day and I fell into a super deep depression. Like I've never experienced anything like that before. And for 4 or 5 days, I was not functional at all. Like I was not able to leave my bed. I was like, the simplest things were like too hard to do. Even like getting food or putting clothes on was like too much of an ask. Like I was completely non-functional for a week almost. And by day 3 or 4, I started to panic, and I was like, okay, if this is my reality now, and I should have said those things plus the medication was what caused that. Like it was a couple of triggers in that moment that came together, and then the whole like thinking about that last year and a half and how everything changed in my life and all of that plus those events plus the medication caused all that. And so I kind of panicked, and I was like, if this is the situation now, like I have to quit everything. I can't do anything anymore. That was the first time ever that I was like, I need to get a job. I don't want the responsibility anymore of having a business and like doing all these things, serving all these people. That I've never had that before. For the first time in my life, it felt like a good idea to just get a job. But also, I didn't even know if I was able, if I could even do that, because I couldn't do the simplest things. And then I was in full-on panic mode for 2 days or so. Still managed to do feedback in the coaching portal, slow, but I did it. And so nobody really knew, and I kind of did the bare minimum to just keep people happy. And then on like day 5 or 6, I woke up and everything was normal again. And I was like, oh, I can totally manage all of this. Like I can handle this. This is not like, it's not the end of the world. It's like, I just need, a plan. And like, it all seemed doable again. And I was like, what was wrong the last couple of days? Like, I don't know what happened. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very weird. And I talked to my doctor, and he was like, yeah, that can happen with those pills, plus, a couple of other things. When a few things come together, that can happen. And it kept being a roller coaster for a couple of days, and every single day was like a new surprise. Some days were terrible, others were better. Now it's stabilized. But it's crazy how powerful the mind is, and what, like, objectively, nothing changed. The situation was exactly the same. But on one day, it felt like, it's over, like game over. I can't do anything anymore. It's all too much. It's way too overwhelming. I will never get out of this. And the next day, it's like, well, that's doable. Like, not a big deal.
Right.
And it's kind of crazy how that works. And that was fascinating. Also, now, should it happen again, I hopefully know that I've been through that once, and that I can maybe, have the patience to just get through it. And I also think it won't happen again, because they told me it's only the first 2-3 weeks of that.
Right.
But yeah, now the thing is, I have to take these pills for the rest of my life, probably. I have to see, like, what's the word for a heart doctor, heart specialist in English? cardiologist. Is that
cardiologist?
I have to see a cardiologist every 3 months now because those pills are causing all kinds of heart disease and problems and whatnot. And I might even have to get heart surgery at some point, they told me, when I am older, because I have to take them for such a long time. I also do think, though, that, I don't know, 20 years from now, who knows? Maybe there's a different treatment, and there's going to be improvements and new technologies and whatnot, so who knows? But it's still something that I'm not really excited about, of course, but it's the way it is now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the reason. And it just got to a point where I clearly couldn't do it anymore. It was just not possible. And the decision that I made, and that was the reason for why the podcast stopped and nothing else, or not much else, was that I quickly had to think about a couple of priorities. And I will, if at all possible, I will not let down the people who trust me with their music and pay me to work on their music. I will not let down the coaching students. And more than anything, I will not let down my kids and my family who need me. And so I continue to serve those people. I continue to do work, or I sent out a couple of messages that there's going to be a delay of a few days or something, but nothing crazy. But as much as I love this podcast and our listeners community, that and a couple of other things were just not the top priority for a moment there. And I have to just say that because, yeah, there's family, there's friends, there's kids, and then there are the artists and the people who trust me with their art. And I had to at least try and serve them. And so that's why I had to say, well, let's stop the podcast. Let's stop posting on social media. Let's stop all kinds of other things. And everything that's not really essential, at least for a couple of days or weeks. And that's what I did. And that was the reason, the main reason for this podcast. And then when I was into that break for a while, I realized, okay, that's actually cool because now I can think about, what I want to change about the show maybe in the future, what went well, what I want to improve. And I never really stepped away from it anyways. And so I think it's actually, that's a good thing about it, that it let me think about it. And so, yeah, that was the recap and backstory and why I paused it. And instead, I focused on improving the coaching program. So there was only this one really terrible week. The rest of the time I was very productive and I worked normal hours, more than most people, I think, but for what I do, kind of normal. Still too much. I have to change that probably as well. But I was still productive. I updated and improved our program a lot. Our community inside the coaching program is very, very active. We signed up new members constantly. We have great group calls in there. I give feedback every single day without fail. This never stopped, by the way. And I'm mixing exciting music. And I just focused on those things more than anything. And I did less, but I did it better, I think. And I didn't rush things as much. I went into more detail. I took more time to give even more detailed feedback. I took a little more time to finish some mixes. I went the extra mile here and there. And it just felt great to go deeper and not spread myself so thin for a while now. This really felt great because I was really spreading myself too thin. And so this was a realization here that I kind of have themed days on my calendar now where I focus on one thing only per day, basically. And so there's purely mixing days, there's content days, there's, marketing days, whatever. But whatever, all the things that I do them better and I go deeper instead of wider. And this has been really exciting to see what comes from that. And so, yeah, it overall, it's better than before now, and I already feel a lot better. I feel like everything's stabilized, and there's a lot of things that I also learned from that. So yeah, this is the story, and yeah, I think it was time to just share that because I felt like it, and this is part of what because I said in the beginning I want to say also I want to talk about how I want to make content in the future, is that whenever, of course, it's about audio, and of course we teach certain things, but I want this to be a community, and I want this personal element to it as well. And whenever I feel like sharing something that could be relevant or that I want to share with our community, I want to do it. And I care less about how people could perceive certain things or whether or not the audio community as a whole does things a certain way. I want to do more of what I believe in or what we believe in. This is also true for audio techniques and whatnot. I want to be less influenced by whatever the general consensus or whatever it might be and what people think about it. And I really want to be even more authentic and true to what I believe in and do more of that. And I think that's good. And I think, that's what I want to do in the future here as well. And I also think that it made me a better coach in some ways, that whole experience the last 1.5 years, because honestly, that's my story, and it hasn't been great, but also it's not the end of the world. And there's people who've experienced things that are way worse. And in our community, and even in the coaching group, that is not that huge, of course, compared to our entire listenership, but even inside there are people who are struggling with certain things, and everybody went through, one thing or another, some worse than others. And before I took the time to think about my own situation, I was kind of like sometimes ignoring that, or I don't know. Now that I think about it a little differently, I think I can guide people through those situations a little better, because it's not just about pushing through all the time. And now that I've been struggling myself, I feel like I understand people better who are also struggling while at the same time trying to accomplish something and trying to still do art and music, and they are struggling to, get it all done. And before that, I sometimes didn't really understand why some people took so long to do things or failed to do a certain thing. And now I have a better understanding of that, and I feel like I can be a better coach because of that experience. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a lot of people listening that empathize with this story, with what's happened for you over the last year and a half, right? The audio community is not shy on mental health problems. Yeah. It's like probably one of the more populated. It's not just that there's a lot of artists who tend to struggle with mental health more as just a subset of people, but it's also the lifestyle and stresses of this job, of being in a band. The negative side effects of being in a band are pretty high, unfortunately. Being in dive bars every night drinking beer is not good for your mental health.
Exactly.
Or even being in a jam space constantly, and the stresses of the relationships inside of a band, and then recording, like it's so time consuming in a dark little room. Generally, it's like there's so much about it. You start eating bad because you're just trying to hustle and get things done, or you're spending all your money on getting gear, so you cancel the gym membership. Like, it's just kind of like this vicious thing that I'm sure everybody's got some version where they've kind of got themselves into a corner without realizing it. And I hadn't really thought about it how you said it, Benny, of like stopping and actually being able to think about stuff was maybe the best thing that could come out of that. I think probably everybody could apply that to something in their life. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to get to what we can take away from this, and specifically what can go wrong if you don't do it, because I haven't realized for the longest time. It wasn't that, nothing really objectively terrible happened. I still kept the balls in the air. The business grew all the time. My mixes improved. I didn't drop balls. I didn't miss deadlines, or I served the coaching people well. Everything from the outside, everything was working. It was just, and so I didn't realize that still a lot of things went wrong, and I could have done a lot better in many areas. But I didn't realize, because all of the metrics still seemed to be right, and everything kind of still worked. And the thing is, if you love what you do, it's even harder to realize when you're doing too much. If you're in a job that you hate and you have to work crazy long hours, and then life happens and other things happen, and it's easy to see how that could stress you out. But if the thing you do all day is something you absolutely love, you might not realize that it's not good for you to work 14 hours all the time and then have other life events happen and whatnot. I didn't really realize how that completely got out of control. If I look at my calendar the last couple of months and probably years, it got to a point where it was completely normal that I worked 80 hours or something. I start work at 6 and I don't stop before 7 or 8 every single day. All I've done especially since my family fell apart, except for the days when I have my kids, I prioritize my kids over everything on those days, and I don't do anything else, and I'm glad I can do that. But when the kids are not here, the only thing I've done for a year and a half now is get up, work out, sleep. That's it. And maybe eat something in between. But that's all I've done. I've neglected friends. I've neglected all kinds of other personal relationships. I don't have any other hobbies. I mean, last year was still running and doing competitions there, but I even stopped that at some point. And so since October or so, it was really getting up at 6, working until I couldn't work anymore, working out for an hour, sleeping, and then doing it all over again every single day. And I didn't realize that was a problem, because I had fun. I really, as weird as that sounds, I had fun
mixing and coaching, and I didn't realize how stressful that is, and that I still need a break, and that I think I was kind of running away from some of the problems in my life and some stuff that I didn't want to see, and it was an easy, escapism kind of thing. But eventually, my body just told me that it's not sustainable, and and I had to realize that. So I think it's even harder if it's something that you enjoy, and I know that is true for many people in bands as well. And it's great that we have this passion and we love it so much, but we still need breaks and to step away from it every once in a while, because everything will eventually come to a grinding halt if you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's two scenarios that I think can land you there. There can be you've got your bases covered, home life is good, friend life is good, you've got enough money to not be stressed about that, and that allows you just to pursue something with reckless abandon. That's one scenario. And the other is maybe none of those things are, and you just are ignoring the lack of your essentials by throwing yourself deeply at your passion.
Yeah. And
both of those are bad ideas, even though they both feel like the exact thing you need to be doing at that moment. And maybe it's not bad idea in that I think temporarily it can help, maybe for you, Benny, you said that you kind of distracted yourself by just going after, keeping the balls afloat, you said, and growing the business kind of thing. And that can stop a complete crumble when an incident occurs. But at the end of the day, you gotta deal with everything that comes. There's no avoiding any of this, right?
No, absolutely true. And the funny thing is, since for a couple of weeks now, I've tried to get better at this, and I've tried to say no more to things, because I'm very bad at saying no, and I've tried to focus, like I said, go deeper on less things, do fewer things but do them better. And I also allowed myself to just say, well, you know what, today I don't work, because I didn't even stop when I was sick or something, right? And if I have a really bad day now, or if something happens that is really important outside of work, I try to now say, well, I guess I don't work this afternoon because this other thing came up. Or I even go, I will even, and that it's probably very normal for most people, especially self-employed people. But I started when friends ask me to do a certain thing that's exciting, and I get to a couple of these events that happened, when there's an opportunity to do something that I really want to do, and I have no boss that can, keep me from doing that, then I will say yes to those things now and do them, because I know I can still do the work later that day, or maybe on a Saturday when the weather is bad, but because now I want to go out with my friends. I just try and do this now intentionally, and I will find a balance there, and I still work a lot, but it's funny how when I started doing this and actually enjoying life outside of work a bit and be a little more flexible with my structures and routines, how that didn't really change anything. The world didn't end, and I still met deadlines, and I still, I was so afraid of doing that, because I felt like if I do that, I will drop balls and everything will fall apart. But no, it's not the end of the world. You can take a break for 2 or 3 hours and then come back, and it will be fine. I really had to learn this, and I had to learn to enjoy things again, and not being afraid that when I come back, everything will be worse. And so, I'm trying to do that right now. And so, for example, this week, this was a very good example. On Monday and Tuesday, two of my favorite bands, so now we're getting to the music stuff a little bit. Two of my favorite bands, Comeback Kid and Bane. Comeback Kid's from Canada, Bane's from the US. Both of I've been a fan of those bands for 20 years or so, since I've been a teenager. And these are hardcore bands, and you might know them. They played in my hometown 2 times in a row. So the first one was on Monday. The show when they started selling tickets for that, the show sold out in 5 minutes or something crazy like that. So they announced the second one that sold out in 20 minutes or so. And it's a very small venue. It's the one that I grew up in. Basically, I mixed hundreds of shows in that venue, and I've organized a bunch, and all the big bands always tour through there. It's really a legendary thing, and it's in my hometown. And so, this week, those 2 bands, Comeback Kid and Bane, played there. And I was playing a show with my band on Saturday, and I was planning on going there to those shows on Monday. And when I drove home from our show on the weekend, I got a voice message from a friend of mine, Oisy. He's a tour manager. He's worked with, he's a tour manager. He's worked with all kinds of big bands, Parkway Drive and others. He managed those types of huge tours, and he knows everybody especially in the punk rock, alternative, heavy music kind of scene. And he's a friend of mine. He comes from the same area here. And he sent me a voice message, and I haven't heard of him in a year or so, or a couple of months, actually. And so I was in the car getting this voice message. I listened to it. It was 10 seconds or so. And he was like, hey, Comeback Kid's going to be in town. You know that. And Andrew, the singer from Comeback Kid, is going to come to your studio to record some guest vocals for some other record. You'll get a message about this in a couple of minutes. Bye. And I'm like, okay, you don't even know if I'm available, and if I actually also don't track anymore, but hey, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll make myself available then. And I still have a microphone, I can make it work. So that was funny. So then I went to the show on Monday, talked to Andrew real quick, the singer of Comeback Kid. And yeah, on Tuesday, he came to my studio and we tracked vocals that afternoon, which was a crazy session because, 16-year-old me just freaked out and or 20-year-old me, and it was crazy to record that guy at my studio. And I've over the years, I got to know a couple of people in big bands and stuff. It's not that I'm starstruck or anything, but it was still amazing to actually work with him at my studio, not somewhere else, in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of a really funny situation. Also, what are the chances that he needs to record some guest vocals for a different record the day that he's in my hometown? So that was funny. And why I'm telling this is that, of course, I have a schedule. I'm very structured. I have systems. I have a routine. And I have been doing the same things basically every single day for years now. But that required me to kind of ignore my calendar and just say yes to this and be spontaneous and prepare the studio and set up a recording rig because I haven't recorded in a while. I just mix. And I just said yes to this. And it kind of, there was a short moment of panic again because I was like, I have to mix all these songs and I have to do these other things and I don't know how I will get it done this week. But I just did it nonetheless. And then it was such a fun session. And of course, nothing terrible happened and I will still get my work done for this week. And I just enjoyed the session with him. And then I went to the second show on Tuesday as well, although that wasn't planned. And I had 2 amazing nights. And yeah, I just have to learn now that sometimes I can be spontaneous and that and that's not always a terrible thing. And so, yeah, that was nice. And then, I don't know, I'm just enjoying, I just enjoyed it way more than some of the other things that I've been doing. Also, the shows with my own band, being on a stage again, that also sometimes seems like a waste of time. You drive for hours in a car and then you play for 45 minutes and we're not a very big deal. So I sometimes wonder if it's all worth it. But I have so much fun and it's it's therapy, it's community, it's friendship, and it's so important to me. And every time I get back home, I feel like that was worth it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, if you can do it for you, it's absolutely worth it no matter what, right?
Totally. And also, the thing that we can take away from the session, from the vocal session, that's something I wanted to share was, I didn't just show up and rushed everything. It was like, I gotta get this done, but I have other things to do. No, I intentionally took the day off, basically, got here way early, set up the studio properly, did I got the files from that other band, the backing track and all those things. I set up a headphone mix, I did the sound check, I made sure the studio looks nice, I asked what drinks he want, I made sure everything's as comfortable as possible for him and everything works. And I went deep on that one thing. I ignored everything else and it felt super great. And then when Andrew came here, everything was ready. He got into the live room and within 2 minutes we were recording. Everything was set up. Everything was working. Everything was sounding great. We didn't even do a sound check or something. He just got in there. I played the backing track and he immediately started. And then after the session, everything went super well. Everybody was happy. And then after the session, he told me that not once the entire day, we talked about audio or how it sounds or anything like that. All he said was, man, I just love it when things are that easy and comfortable and stress-free and seamless and the whole experience was so great and I'm so grateful that you did this and you made it happen and I know it was short notice and all that, but I'm so happy it worked out that way. And he kept going about how exciting the experience was. And I'm so glad I did it that way because not too long ago, I would have probably rushed it. I would have been there 20 minutes before. I would have done the necessary things and I would have done a good job. But I would also have been very stressed out and tried to get in a bunch of other things that same day. And on that day, I only did that and I did it really well.
Right.
And that paid off. And that was really cool to see too.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I'm a big notepad list guy.
Yeah.
Benny knows that about me. But I got started with a guided journal almost kind of thing. And it was write down the one thing you want to do today to be a success. And then you can write down other things under it. But really, it's just this one thing. If you get that done, the day's good. Yeah. And there you go. All you got to do is this session. Anything else is bonus.
Exactly.
And like that mindset's totally different than like, I need to do these 16 things today. They all have to get done. And I'm going to be stressed out about all of them at the same time.
Yes, totally. And then I went, actually after that session, I went into like my email software and all of my data that I've collected over the years. And I was looking into, feedback that I got from artists working with me. And it was cool to see that, and I didn't even realize as much, and it wasn't that intentional, but it was cool to see that most of the people who work with me, I knew that that pretty much all of them are stoked about, working with me, and that's great. But the majority of the positive feedback was about how much they enjoyed the process, not just the results, but the communication, going the extra mile, all of that. So I've always done that, but I personally didn't even notice, and I didn't feel good about it because it felt so stressful. It felt like I had to do all these extra things, and I didn't feel like I really had the time to do this. I still did it because I knew it was right. But seeing how important that actually is for people, that you are calm and chill and easy to work with, and that you're prepared and not stressed out and not in a rush, and you do things properly, that's so important to people. And they appreciate it so much when the process is good, not just the result, that I now hopefully focus even more on that and do it in a more intentional way. And that I actually also appreciate that and don't feel bad about it, basically. And yeah, that's just a realization that I had now. And that it's funny because I never noticed. Like, people thank me for the results all the time, and they say like great mixes and whatnot. But the best feedback was always about the process and about how they enjoyed working with me. And so I can do more of that if I feel good, and if I'm a sane, normal person, I feel like I can do way more of that. Because everything else, I know I have the skills. Like, that's assumed. I know I can do great mixes, but the rest of it, I feel like I can only do that consistently and at a very high level if I am feeling well enough to do that, and if I can do it intentionally. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, that was one of the things. And then those shows with my band worked well as well. Great, like I said, great experiences, and just showed me again like how important music is to me actually, and how other people probably feel about this as well. So I understand that a lot better now too, because I intentionally thought about it a little bit. So it was exciting and interesting weeks. And it was a roller coaster, but it was also very exciting and interesting. And yeah, and then. Oh man, I kept thinking about so many things. And then I talked to a lot of our coaching students, of course, all the time. And I pay attention mostly to their results and their recordings and the thing that I'm hired to guide them through. And this is fine. Now I took the time to like look at why they do certain things a certain way, or why they struggle with certain things. And I figured out that a lot of people actually struggle with things not because they don't get the concept, or they are not skilled or experienced enough or whatever. They oftentimes struggle because they do the same thing for different reasons, but they spread themselves too thin between many different things, and then they don't take breaks, they don't step away from their work, and they sometimes forget the really important things. They rush things. They sometimes forget the why. They forget the long-term goals. Sometimes people in the program are very ambitious and are working on their music and are doing all the things that I come up with them and that I try and help them to do, but they sometimes forget why they're even doing it, because they get so deep into it, and they are so ambitious, and they are putting every single hour into it, and sometimes they don't even remember why they started this. It just feels like a bunch of tasks sometimes, and not like something they actually wanted to do, and then they skip important things, they rush things, they focus on things that are not really important, and the ones who are doing really well and who are not struggling as much are the ones who take it a little bit slower, but they do it thoroughly. They're not in a rush. They take breaks. They take care of personal stuff first when it comes up. They tell me, hey, I need a break from the program because I have to deal with this first. And then they come back and then they focus again. And those are the people who get the best results, honestly. I've realized that. And those are the people who are struggling less and who are making progress. And it's not just how, it's not just the skills or the experience or whatever, or the talent. It's how you organize yourself in your life, and how balanced you are in a way, and how some people just don't have the bandwidth to focus on those things actually, and to take in the advice and to implement the stuff. And that's the reason for why so many people are struggling and others are doing it better. And yeah, that all just, I think, makes me a better coach now. And I had this realization just that it also happens with those people in the program. And it's interesting how I always ignored that. I was sometimes wondering why seemingly simple things just keep being ignored. And oftentimes it's just because there's only so much you can remember, and there's only so many things you can do, and only so many hours in the day, and people just don't have the bandwidth, and they do 5 out of 10 things, and the other 5 just slip through the cracks. Yeah, and this happens. So yeah, the quality of everything you do suffers if you don't take breaks, basically. And
yeah, and I think the key word there was balance that you used. Like, couldn't really sum it up better than balance.
And then the insecurity and the self-doubt are a big problem too, because if you do things like that and you are constantly under time pressure and struggling and trying to balance all these things and trying to keep all these balls in the air, and then you know that you are kind of half-assing things. Most people have a feeling like they know that they're not doing their best, or they are not able to perform at the highest level. Basically, they know that they can only do a certain, the minimum or a certain amount, and that leads to an insecurity, and so that makes it even worse, because then they half-ass it a little bit, or they do the minimum, then they submit stuff for feedback. They already know it's not too good. Then before I even get to the feedback, they delete the file again, upload a new version. Then they do an all-nighter and try to fix all the things that they should have done last week, but they didn't because they rushed it. And then they don't believe in their own work anymore. They have a hard time publishing anything, and it just makes things worse. And so that is a part of it too. And I noticed that the balanced, more calm people, they can finish something to the best of their abilities, upload it, wait for feedback, take the advice, iterate, upload it again, and they get to a result. And the other ones who are constantly in a rush, it's just chaos oftentimes. And I understand why, because I've done many things in my life the same way. And
right.
It's interesting, fascinating.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Well, and then finally, the relationships thing is also one thing. Your relationships suffer if you do that as well, if you don't take care of yourself, because you're probably, even if you don't realize, you're probably overreacting. I know I certainly did in some situations when I was interacting with other people, just because of my problems or whatever I'm going through. I kind of overreacted in situations where it was not appropriate, and you're eventually turning your own problems into someone else's problems, and then people who they can tell that you're stressed out, that something's wrong maybe, but if they don't know what's going on, they might think that there's something wrong between you and them, and then your relationships might suffer, and it's personal relationships but also professional relationships. And the thing is, most of us, if we're not just making music purely for ourselves at home, we need other people, we need collaborators, we need those relationships, we need promoters, other bands, collaborators, labels, playlisters, media people, professional service providers, etc. And everything is just infinitely harder if we don't have our own ducks in a row, and if we are easy to work with, if we are not easy to work with, if we're not calm and friendly and reliable and stable, everything's just way harder. And your relationships will inevitably suffer if you put yourself in a situation like that, basically, and if you don't take care of yourself. That's also dangerous.
Yeah, I think that one's actually huge. Especially you saying that it's probably not as big of a deal as you think it is. You could be overreacting like that in the studio scenarios of a band, especially self-recording. When something doesn't turn out, you track something and you think you've done your best, but isn't good enough, and you have to do it over again. It can feel like this huge strife, or sometimes on the relationship topic, maybe you've got to ask that band member, let's pick on bassists like we usually do. Maybe you've got to ask your bassist to redo what they've already tracked on a song, or all the songs potentially, right? And that can cause this, if everybody's stressed out and hasn't had time to reflect, and it's just we're under the time crunch and we're broke or whatever, it's not a big deal. We gotta play music some more is really what it is. But it feels like this, maybe personal attack, or we don't have time for this, or we wasted all that time. There's so many bad ways to look at a good situation, which is you're hanging out with your friend, recording it again, and learning and doing a better job than the last time.
Yeah.
That's just one example, but I really see where you're coming from, where we're probably overreacting and considering things that aren't problems to be problems when we're not in a good headspace.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, artists, there's oftentimes the extremes anyways. Like some of us are introverts, others are extroverts. There's all kinds of different characters that come together. There's like, even if we're all feeling good, there's more than enough tension usually, in a room full of artists, and there's like interesting band dynamics, almost like, and that stuff is part of it anyway. But if additional, stuff, if you add to that the stress and like personal things that you're not dealing with, it can be really tough. Yeah. And so you're doing yourself definitely a disservice if you're not addressing those things. And you, like you said, you might not even be aware of that. You might not even realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. It's pretty fascinating. And like going back to you kind of getting hit with like a serious bout of depression, it's like when that hits, it feels like you can't even imagine it being good. It's like, it felt literally what you've been doing for years now felt impossible. Yes. And here you are doing it again, like no problem, right? You're like the most organized, like efficient person I've ever met. But on those days you weren't, and you couldn't conceive of being the normal Benny, right? So there's like trying to remember the good in those situations. I don't know how you do that, but it's so important. And then also just like having the empathy for your team and the people in your own circle that you interact with. So for Benny, that's his coaching students. For our listeners, that could be your bandmates or the artist you're recording or whatever it may be. Having that same compassion and empathy to realize where they might be, that maybe they don't see themselves as being able to do it right now.
100%. And I don't think I was terrible at that before. It's like, I know I'm not really, I might be doing myself a disservice by doing this episode because it might come across like I'm a mess right now, whatever. But like, I didn't drop balls. Like, I still served the people well.
No, you crushed
it. Yeah, and also I wasn't terrible at those things in the past. Not at all. I feel like I've always had like empathy and tried to understand people. But still, now having experienced something like that myself, I see it in a different way, and I might, when I respond to certain things or when I try to give advice, I might take a minute longer and think about it some more, or like think about it a little differently. And I feel like I can coach people better with a better understanding, and because of that. And it's not that I was terrible before that, but it definitely changed a few things. And the other thing is I also still want to do this. Absolutely, and I still love it, and I'm still very organized, and I still work a lot. It was just this 1 week where nothing worked, but like overall, everything's working, everything's growing, everything's so I still want to do that, but it was shocking how, like you said, how from one day to the next everything just falls apart and nothing works anymore, and then just as fast you can be back and everything, and that's the danger here as well, like. It got better so fast that it would be easy for me to do exactly the same thing over and over again, because now I feel great again and I could just do what I was doing before. And now the challenge is that I make changes on the days that I feel good, because it's quite easy to make radical changes when everything's terrible and you're forced to do it. But then when things get better again, we can easily forget this and fall back into our own ways. And like, that's the challenge now, to do it on the days that I feel good. And I will always be a person who works long hours. I will always be a person who has this passion and this drive, and I will be always organized, and I don't regret doing these things, not at all. Like, that has served me very well. But I don't have to be as extreme, and I can allow myself to take a break every once in a while. I can still be driven and work, and that's me, and that's fine. But it's also okay to take a break and to take care of myself. And it's not only okay, it's necessary. And so that's the thing. And I keep serving people, and I won't drop balls, and I will do all of these things. But yeah, I also have to learn that I'm important as well, and that I can't serve anybody if if I'm not functional. That's the other realization that I had.
Totally.
And then when I had to stop the podcast, like my thoughts were like, okay, what are the things that are non-negotiables? I have to take care of my kids. That's number one, of course. I have an employee. Like, if I don't show up, if I do the essentials to like bring in money and to keep the thing going, then what happens to Thomas, right? I have a responsibility there. He's like, I'm paying him, and he's counting on that. Then I have people in the coaching program who trust me and rely on my guidance, and they pay me for that, and they believe in this, they are excited about it, they're getting results, and I can't let them down. And then I have artists who, without knowing me from like some different continent or whatever, only knowing me through the internet, they sent me a whole lot of money to mix their songs and trust me with their art, and it's important to them, so I can't let them down. And basically those were the only things I was able to then do for a period of time, and I did them, and I did them well. And then I realized, well, if I only did that and I did it really well, and then I'm very smart about how to get, how to do all the other things, that works. And it feels good to be even more intentional there and to be able to go even deeper there. And like stopping social media for a couple of weeks, for example, it was never part of our strategy anyway, like never really important anyways. And just stopping that entirely, no, nothing changed. Like, and so, yeah, a couple of things. But anyway, it was interesting. And I hope that you can, there's a couple of takeaways from this and that you can use and that are helpful to you. Because like I said, I know that in our community, there are people who are going through similar things or things way worse than that, and they're still trying to make music. It's important to them. We need this in our lives. It's like music is very important to us, and yeah, absolutely. And if you're struggling to do all the things and still have time for music, and maybe there's something in this episode that helps you, I don't know, but make time for those things that you feel are essential and that make you feel good. And
for sure,
yeah,
100%.
Weird. It's kind of a weird thing, but like it's also, in a way, I'm glad that some of those things have happened, as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, I get that, man. It's like, I mean, I think that speaks to you a lot in that you find the upside of everything. Because there's like an upside to be found if you go looking for it. So,
and
good on you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was to say, and maybe one very important thing I completely forgot. It's easy to think of yourself when something like that happens. It's easy to think of yourself as like the victim, and you're like, you have no power, no control over the situation, and everything happens to you. And it's easy to fall into that sort of mode, but that doesn't help you at all. And I luckily realized, and that's basically what I was saying in this episode as well, is that I got myself into that situation. It's not like some of the things that happened to me were not my fault, but if my life was set up a little differently, and if I had taken care of myself, like I could have handled those situations better. And I'm not playing like the victim game and like being like, well, I can't, there's nothing I can do about this, like everything sucks and I guess it will be like that forever. And no, you can absolutely change your situation. There's some things outside of your control, but there's usually plenty of stuff that's within your control. And even if it's just small things, just knowing that you can do something, even if it's just a tiny thing, really helps. And that's not advice for like depression or anything like that. I know how terrible that is, and you really feel powerless in those situations. And it's not a like toughen up kind of thing. That's bullshit. But like, if you're not in a deep depression and you're just struggling and are stressed out, and or things happen to you and you feel like a victim, maybe there's still some part of your day that you can control. And if you realize that there is, it really feels good. And also, if you're able to be like, well, I guess I got myself into this situation, so I can also get myself out of this situation. I just have to change a few things. That's really powerful, and that helps. Yeah. I just want to say that too, because it's easy to just be like, well, there's nothing I can do.
As much as possible, focus on what you can control. And that feels good. It feels enabling. Another list exercise. I keep holding up my notepad. But like write down, if you're like feeling like that, write down what you could control right now kind of thing. Like that's probably another Ben and I similarity. Going for a run is like, this has multiple benefits and I can do it right now. Absolutely.
And honestly, that's what I think that's a main part of what kept me going and got me through this year and a half, despite the problems. It was actually the exercise and the workouts, the runs, that really helped a lot. And I just having this routine and like a few things that I did no matter what helped a lot, honestly. Mm-hmm. And yeah. Anyway, well, what to expect now from this podcast in the future? Well, we'll be back with weekly episodes, and I want to change a few things. And I'm not making like crazy promises right now because I, again, don't want to overcommit now that we're back. But I thought about how we can make the show better. And first of all, we said that before and we started doing that already. We want to do a couple of like shorter to the point episodes on specific like topics, like actionable topics that help you right away, solve one specific problem on a certain episode. The other thing is when we talk about a specific audio concept, I try to include audio examples now. We'll see how well that goes, or we're going to test this, but I want to do that. It's kind of a challenge because some of the platforms, you can only have shitty MP3 quality, and then some of them are mono, and there's all kinds of challenges with that. But I still want to try and give you some audio examples so that you don't just hear us talk about it, but actually hear what we're talking about. So we're going to try that. Then we're going to have incredible guests as well because, like I said, things kept growing, and also our relationships and everything. And I've done exciting things in the past, so we have really cool guests lined up as well that will join us on the show. This will happen too. Yeah, and I basically just want to do whatever we feel like doing and maybe experiment with a couple of things. And if it resonates, we'll do more of that. And if you tell us that's not interesting, you don't want that, then we stop. But I will pay less attention to what everybody else does or what I think we should do as a podcast, because that also adds to the whole stress and the whole mental issue is the whole comparison thing. Like getting away from social media, for example, was also important because of that. Because if you constantly compare yourself to other content creators, other mixers, other people in your field or outside, I don't know, you always see these seemingly perfect lives and careers and what they accomplish, and you immediately start to compare yourself to that, whether it's true or not, and it's not healthy. And I want to pay less attention to that and just do more of what I truly believe in and what I feel like is right and what I feel like helps you based on my own experience. And if there's something we try and you say that's not helpful, tell us when we stop. And if you feel like something is really cool, then we do more of that. But I want to be a little more open there and just be me and be us more and be more authentic. So that's the plan.
Yeah. 219 episodes in, I think we can afford to switch it up a little and try some new things.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for staying with us for this episode. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate this. And
I do want to quickly say, Benny,
sorry for the long monologue. This was like very...
Not at all. I mean, people probably don't probably assume this isn't the case, but actually what is the case is that a lot of this was entirely news to me as well. Unfortunately, Benny and I have barely been able to talk for months now, which is so abnormal for us. Normally, like sometimes we would come on to record a podcast and just chat and be like, we can't record. We chatted too long. So like not having Benny in my life has sucked. So I'm so glad we're back at this. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of information in there that I just hadn't been able to get up to speed on. Word. So I'm just glad you're feeling better, man. I'm so glad that we're back to doing this. Love you lots. And
same, dude.
Can't wait till the next time we get to hang out in person as well.
Absolutely. By the way, Studio Szene tickets just started. I think they just started ticket sales for that. So that's going to be an opportunity.
Come hang out with us in Germany again.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. We need to do that soon, Malcolm. We need to see each other again. And I missed you as well a lot, actually. And I'm glad we're back. And so, thank you for letting me do this long monologue today. And thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate that. And I can't wait to do more of the regular episodes and just be back and be more in contact also with our community through that medium again. And
and thank you to the people that did message that were like, where are you guys? That's really thoughtful. I feel like Benny is being hard on himself, being like, we stopped. I'm like, no, we took like a pause. Like we're probably in the top 1% of like consistent podcasts.
We are actually.
Still.
You're right. But totally. It was very thoughtful and cool to see that. And people didn't ask about like, hey, where's the new episode? They asked about, hey, is everything okay with you? And like, I noticed there was a pause. They really cared. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. We appreciate it.
Totally. All right. See you next week where we're going to start with I can give you a little preview here. We're going to do a Back to Basics series. And you're going to hear what this is all about. But that's also a realization that I had when I was analyzing all these things that happened and the feedback that I got and the problems I was solving in the coaching program, for example. I want to talk about the non-negotiables, things you absolutely can't ignore when you want to make a record. And some of the basic concepts. We've talked about most of those things before, but as the saying goes, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And I still see too many people ignore those things. So we want to do a Back to Basics series that I highly encourage you to listen to. And it's going to start next week. So I'm excited about that. And if you're interested in getting into the coaching, actually, that I've been talking all the time, I'm very excited to sign up new people and that we are more than capable of handling that. And I feel now I'm more prepared than ever. You go to the selfrecordingband.com and you read on that page, you can scroll down and see all the information, how it works and what we do. And if that sounds interesting to you, you fill out a quick application, you hit the apply now button, and you fill out a quick application. And if we approve that, if we feel like you're a good fit because we listen to your music, we read through that application, and if we feel like this could be a good fit, we schedule a completely free call. We call it a clarity call, because on that call, we're going to figure out what you actually need and want, and if those two things are the same. And then we figure out where you are right now, what you need to do in order to get where you want to be, and whether or not we can help you with that. And on this call, we outline a roadmap for you. Basically, we create a roadmap draft, things that I would do if I were in your shoes. We create this roadmap, and then you can approve it, and you can take it and just try and implement it on your own. Or you can be like, hey, let's do this together, and then we'll guide you every step along the way and make sure you actually implement it and hit your goals. Either way, I'm convinced it's a very valuable thing to do, because best case scenario, it's a perfect match and we work together. Worst case scenario, you get an hour of free coaching. So go to the selfrecordingband.com and apply. And I hope to see you inside the Self-Recording Syndicate, in this amazing community of people where we share all kinds of things, music related and also personal, and where everybody's stoked about the progress they're making. I've been posting the last couple of days. I've been posting screenshots from the community of people who are beyond stoked about their results and the progress they've been making. And so, yeah, I'd love to see you inside there, the selfrecordingband.com.
Go check it out.
All right. See you next week. Bye-bye.
See you next one.